Welcome to my class, Why is Murder Wrong? A Study of Philosophical Ethics. This is video 1, an introduction. What is the source of ethics? Allow me to introduce myself. First of all, I'm a rabbi. I served for 32 years in Tamarack, Florida. I'm the rabbi emeritus. Currently, I'm at a smaller senior congregation in Boca Raton, Florida. But beside that, I'm also a professor of philosophy and religion at 3 different colleges. I've been teaching college ethics for over 15 years, thinking and reading about ethics. I received my PhD from Florida Atlantic University in 2016 with a dissertation on Whitehead's process philosophy and on Jewish mysticism, in particular the creation story in the Zohar. And through my books, lectures, classes, I see myself standing in the place where religion, philosophy, and science all meet. And finally, I'm the author of 8 books on a variety of religious and philosophical topics. My most recent book is entitled, Does the Universe Have a Soul? It was published by Sheltering Tree Earth, LLC. I hope you enjoy this course, and you should always feel free to contact me at rabbigold, RABBIGOLD, at AOL.com. Why is murder wrong? We are speaking here about cold-blooded murder of an innocent person, and most of us would agree. In fact, I think there's very little question that it is ethically wrong to go up to somebody and kill them. The question for this class is why? What makes it wrong? We're not referring to some more difficult technical situations. Are you allowed to kill somebody during a war or in self-defense? Or what about a hostage situation? We're not going to be talking about abortion or euthanasia, as important as those issues are. We're not going to speak about killing animals, but rather killing a human being. Each of these topics is worthy of its own ethical discussion, but here we're speaking of the deliberate murder of an innocent person. And it's an extremely difficult question. Our search for an answer will take us on a journey through the branch of philosophy known as ethics. An overview of the course. First, we have this introduction, and then part 1 is meta-ethics, ethical realism, ethical nominalism. We'll get into each of those. Part 2 is relative ethics, social contract theory, ethical subjectivism, cultural relativism, and divine command theory. Part 3, universal ethics, based on Aristotle, virtue ethics, natural law. Part 4, universal ethics based on consequences. What are the results of our action? Ethical egoism, ethical altruism, utilitarianism, one of the major ethical systems. Part 5 is universal ethics based on duties. Deontology, another major ethical system. Feminine care ethics, ethical intuition. And finally, part 6, contemporary issues. We will deal with ethical nihilism and try to come to a conclusion. So what is ethics? Ethics is the branch of philosophy that studies right and wrong or good and bad. Philosophers divide ethics into 3 broad categories. The first is meta-ethics. What is the nature of ethical statements? We know the nature of scientific statements. If I say the earth goes around the sun, I know where a statement like that came from. I could study it. I could say, is it true? Is it false? What's the nature of a statement like murder is wrong? In the next 2 lectures, we will look at meta-ethics. Then there's normative ethics, a method of deciding ethical questions. Sometimes this method is relative, teaching that ethics can vary between people or communities. Sometimes the method is universal, saying that ethics applies to all people everywhere. And this will be at the heart of this series. Finally, we come to applied ethics, applying these ethical methods to decide such questions as medical ethics, business ethics, war and peace, sexual ethics, animal rights, or environmental ethics. As important as these issues are, we will not deal with applied ethics in this series. This series makes the assumption that human beings have free will. The course is built on the assumption on the nature of human beings. The philosopher Immanuel Kant, 1724 to 1804, taught ought implies can. If ethics deals what we ought to do, then it has to deal with what we can do. We can make choices, and the choice between right and wrong behavior means that humans make choices. We live in an age where this idea of human agency is under challenge. Materialism teaches that the universe is simply matter in motion, matter functioning by the laws of physics. Part of this materialistic philosophy is determinism, that the action of every particle is predetermined. Cosmologist Peter Simon Laplace, 1749 to 1827, imagined a powerful demon who knew the location and velocity of every particle in the universe. Such a demon could predict the entire future, including all human behavior. If all behavior is predetermined and human agency does not exist, this raises a serious question about ethics and a serious question regarding punishment for crimes. Why punish somebody for actions when they had no control? This issue is raised by one of the most important criminal trials of the 20th century, the Leopold and Loeb case. Leopold and Loeb. In May 1924, in Chicago, two wealthy young men, Nathan Freudenthal Leopold Jr., 19 years old, and Richard Albert Loeb, 18 years old, kidnapped and murdered 14-year-old Bobby Franks. They were trying to get away with a perfect crime. They had been reading Nietzsche, who we will be studying. And the parents hired the famous defense attorney Clarence Darrow, 1857 to 1938. He was able to prevent the death penalty by arguing that the young men were not acting of their own free will. They were driven by forces beyond their control. And here's part of his closing argument. Your Honor, I'm almost ashamed to talk about it. I can hardly imagine that we are in the 20th century, and yet there are men who seriously say that for what nature has done, for what life has done, for what training has done, you should hang these boys. Notice those words, what nature has done. They were just acting out by their nature. Why did they kill little Bobby Franks? Not for money, not for spite, not for hate. They killed him as they might kill a spider or fly for the experience. They killed him because they were made that way. Because somewhere in the infinite processes that go to the making up of the boy or the man, something slipped. And those unfortunate lads sit here, hated, despised, outcast, with the community shouting for their blood. In other words, they were victims of forces beyond their control. They should not be found guilty, and he was successful with this argument. He got them off the death penalty. Nevertheless, the Western philosophical tradition generally teaches that human beings have free will. Human beings are responsible for their actions. Perhaps the root of this idea goes back to the biblical story which describes how murder entered the world. Cain killed his brother Abel. Before the event, God says to Cain, surely if you do right, there is uplift, but if you do not do right, sin couches at the door. Its urges toward you, yet you can be its master. Genesis 4:7. This class will assume that, like Cain, we can control our urges. It will assume that human beings have free will. Over the next 15 lectures, we will present answers to the question of why be ethical from some of the greatest thinkers in history. For each answer, we will also present challenges to their point of view. Part of the joy of philosophy is the back and forth debate over every philosophical point, known as the Socratic method. The goal of philosophical debate is not to find a final answer, but to sharpen our thinking, to think more clearly, about this issue of ethics. Why is murder wrong? Perhaps the best place to begin is with the thinker who started it all, who gave his name to the Socratic method. Socrates invented the rational discourse that is at the heart of philosophy. With his ideas, we can begin our quest to answer the question, why is murder wrong? Where do ethics come